Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Welcome to the latest edition of Future Trends, the weekly briefing on the changing face of global politics, economics, development, social and conflict. Here's this week's headline stories. China criticizes US coercion over Panama Canal. Tunisia jails opposition and media in crackdown. Baltic nations end electricity ties to Russia. Tighten EU bond. Gaza ceasefire has averted famine, but any truce collapse brings danger. Coffee prices jump to new record amid panic buying. Here's the latest stories in politics. China criticizes US coercion over Panama Canal. The Chinese response followed Panama declining to renew a key infrastructure agreement with Beijing following Washington's threat to take back the Panama Canal. Panama's decision to walk away from it was seen as a concession to the US over the canal, after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Panamanian president. Tunisia jails opposition politicians and journalists as crackdown on political dissent resumes. A judge in Tunisia handed down lengthy sentences to prominent politicians and a leading journalist in the latest move targeting critics of President Kais Saied. Among those sentenced include 83-year-old Rachid Ghannouchi, the country's most prominent opposition leader, who has been in jail for nearly 2 years and was sentenced to an additional 22 years jail for undermining state security. He boycotted the proceedings against him. Philippine lawmakers impeach vice president over assassination plot. Sara Duterte was impeached after a series of controversies. She has been accused of crimes including misusing millions of public funds and plotting President Marcos's assassination. 2/3 of the Senate still need to vote for the impeachment for it to be successful. Ecuador presidential race set for runoff as leftist outperforms. Incumbent Daniel Noboa led leftist Luisa Gonzalez by less than 1%, meaning a likely April 13th runoff between the pair. The rivals also faced one another in 2023, when they fought to win the chance to finish out the truncated term of Noboa's predecessor. Noboa campaigned to continue his hardline policies against organized crime. Sudan to form new government after regaining Khartoum. Army head Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said he would form a technocratic wartime government. The Sudanese army, long on the back foot in its war with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, has regained ground in the capital Khartoum, closing in on the symbolic presidential palace along the Nile. Now to updates in conflict. Which countries are involved in the DRC crisis? Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, and South Africa all have troops in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Rwanda is supporting the M23 rebel group, Burundi has supplied troops to support the DRC government, and South Africa has supplied many peacekeeping troops, while Uganda is fighting groups which originated in Uganda and also Islamic State, which has become more active in the DRC since 2019. Gaza's ceasefire has averted famine, but any truce collapse brings danger. The UN Humanitarian Office has said more than 12,600 aid trucks have entered Gaza since the ceasefire took effect. The internationally recognized mortality threshold for famine is 2 or more deaths a day per 10,000 people. Founder of pro-Russian paramilitary group dies in explosion in Moscow. Armen Sarkisian founded the Eastern Ukrainian separatist Arbat battalion, fighting in the region. Ukraine's defense intelligence described him as a well-known criminal mastermind who became the supervisor of prisons across Russia and occupied territories of Ukraine in 2022. China building world's biggest military base. The People's Liberation Army is reportedly building a new command center in the capital, Beijing. That, upon completion, will be at least 10 times larger than the US Pentagon. India kills dozens of Maoist rebels in Chhattisgarh battle. A clash between Indian security forces and Maoist rebels in the central Indian state left 31 insurgents and 2 Indian commandos dead. Security forces said they commenced the anti-rebel operation based on intelligence that a large number of Maoists were present in the area. Turning to economics. Baltic nations end electricity ties to Russia. Tighten EU bond. Nearly 3.5 decades after leaving the Soviet Union, the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are ending electricity grid connections to neighbouring Russia and Belarus to lean in more with their European Union allies. The severing of electricity ties to oil and gas-rich Russia is steeped in geopolitical and symbolic significance. Ecuador's president announces tariffs on Mexican exports. President Noboa said the 27% tariff to be applied on Mexican goods was aimed at boosting local manufacturers. But the conservative leader may also be seeking favour with Washington. Meanwhile, China responded to US tariffs by implementing a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, and a 10% tariff on oil, agricultural machinery, and some cars. Norwegian oil giant cuts green investment in half. Norwegian energy giant Equinor is halving investment in renewable energy over the next 2 years, while increasing oil and gas production. Brussels to exempt most EU companies from carbon border tax. Over 80% to be exempted by reforms aimed at cutting red tape and boosting productivity. Coffee futures jump to new record amid panic buying. Prices are up around 35% so far this year, after increasing 70% last year. Coffee futures in New York rose for the 13th straight trading session to a fresh all-time high above $4.30 per pound, with some market participants citing panic in the market amid limited coffee availability, with low stocks in Brazil, which produces nearly half the world's Arabica. Moving to stories in development. Rahim al-Husseini is named the new Aga Khan. He becomes spiritual leader of the world's millions of Ismaili Muslims, following the death of his father. The 53-year-old was designated as the Aga Khan V, the 50th hereditary Imam of the Ismaili Muslims, in his father's will. The Aga Khan is considered by followers to be a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad and treated as a head of state. What USAID does, and why the US government wants to get rid of it. US spent about roughly $40 billion in foreign aid in the 2023 fiscal year, less than 1% of US budget. The US is the largest provider of humanitarian assistance globally. Critics say the programs are wasteful and promote a liberal agenda. US aid funding includes peacekeeping, human rights and refugee agencies. First targets include the UN Population Fund and funding to the Palestinian Authority. Uganda detains 9 finance ministry officials over central bank hack. The accusations are of hacking the central bank's electronic systems, which resulted in theft of $16.9 million. South Korea blocks DeepSeek on security concerns. The industry ministry has temporarily blocked employee access to Chinese artificial intelligence startup DeepSeek due to security concerns, as the government urges caution on generative AI services. Scientists produced the first kangaroo embryo using IVF. The world's first kangaroo embryo has been produced by Australian scientists through in vitro fertilization, which could help save other species from extinction. And finally, the latest stories in social. Nuclear radiation-proof blocks created from volcano. Researchers found that geopolymer mortar made with volcanic ash from Tal volcano has strong radiation-blocking capabilities due to the natural presence of iron-rich minerals in the ash. Genetic hotspots linked to bipolar disorder. The largest study of its kind analysed DNA from almost 3 million individuals, including more than 158,000 with bipolar disorder. Researchers identified 298 stretches of the genome containing gene variants that may boost the risk of bipolar disorder. They also found 36 specific genes linked to the disorder. IP protection breaking down because of artificial intelligence. Amid the military posturing, economic sanctions, and political power struggles shaping the US-China rivalry, intellectual property disputes remain a major battleground. Both DeepSeek and OpenAI have been accused of IP infringement. The internet and newer technologies like AI and 3D printing allow creators to produce, distribute, and monetize their work without traditional gatekeepers, while both AI and 3D printing blur copyright. Kurds in Syria want to preserve cultural rights. Mothers can now give children Kurdish names. The Kurdish language is taught in schools. The new year, Nowruz, can be celebrated openly. The Kurds are one of the world's largest populations without a state of their own. The main Kurdish-led force now controls about 25% of Syria, and Kurds are 10% of the population. 102 deadly snakes removed from homeowner's garden. A snake catcher unearthed 102 venomous red-bellied black snakes, 5 adults and 97 newborn, in a garden in suburban Sydney. The female black snakes are known to congregate to give birth.
Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.